Live from our living room, it's From Long Distance to Marriage with Andrea and Rich. We're a once long-distance couple who closed 5,000 miles of distance and made it through to marriage.
We talk long distance, marriage and relationships.
Hi, and welcome to episode 9 of From Long Distance to Marriage. Today we're going to be talking about the pain points you might be experiencing if you've just moved in together and closed the distance, or what you should expect if you're about to do this. So, one thing to keep in mind, is if you haven't been listening to our podcast yet, is that I made the move to be here with Rich 7.5 years ago almost. And we definitely had our share of pain points, didn't we?
Yeah, but what was interesting for us was that we didn't have them initially. So, we've always lived together when we've been physically together. So,
yeah.
Obviously you stayed at mine for a month, and you came back for Christmas, and I stayed with you for 6 months, and then when you moved back, we properly lived together for about 6 months, I guess, before we got our own place.
Yeah.
So we were living with family for all that time, and we never had any problems, did we? And then,
we did, but they weren't necessarily our problems. It was more the drama of being with your family and kind of everything that
yeah,
entails.
we didn't really have our own issues and arguments and things.
No,
and then I feel
not
like
really.
when we moved out, I felt like that sort of caught us off guard, that suddenly we were arguing.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't really thought about that, actually.
And I think that we call it our sort of bedding in period.
Yeah, I think what was unique about it was the first time that we were both really on our own and supporting ourselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd been at uni and, kind of supported yourself to the extent that, university students, assuming you had grants and probably some money from home, but you had the odd job. But really, most things were taken care of for you, the basics. I hadn't lived on my own. I lived in a dorm briefly. Most of my uni was quite local, so I stayed home. But I think basically what I'm trying to say is
what was taken care of for me?
Well, your rent and food, that was part of your student grant,
right.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't suddenly we were responsible for our own bills. It wasn't coming from a grant. We were having to earn the money.
I don't know if that's what the issue is. I feel like what it was, and I think what's going to be important for this episode, is that you're sort of, for the first time, your two worlds are sort of colliding.
Yeah.
So, we would have arguments just about how the way things had happened in my house when I was growing up were different to the way things happened in your house growing up. And suddenly we're responsible for doing all the laundry. And we'd obviously, doing the dishes and stuff, we'd always do that. But the laundry, when we lived together, our parents were taking care of it.
You didn't talk about the towels.
Yeah, we had a great argument about the towels because we only had, 2 sets?
Yeah.
I feel,
We hadn't been on our own.
This is our first apartment. And I had to change. There was no towels. You'd put the towels in the bathroom in the wash. So I washed my hands, there's no towels in there. I went to the airing cupboard, there's no towels in there. I was like, hey babe, where are all the towels? I'm like, oh, they're all in the wash. So we had this big argument about why would they all be in the wash? Why would you not have a dirty set in the wash and a clean set in the bathroom and have this rotate? Now, as time's gone, we've learned, we've bought more towels.
That was we also didn't have anywhere to keep anything in that flat.
But you wouldn't think about those scenarios before you move in together.
And I think
you don't think about the little things.
For me, typically that kind of stuff, the management of the household does kind of come down to a woman a lot of times. Obviously things aren't always like that, but I think the way our relationship is now, I'm kind of in charge of how the house is run in terms of when the washing's done and where things are stored, but that doesn't mean I do all of it. Rich does washing, puts washing away and stuff, but I kind of manage the strategy behind it. But I think what's unique about our situation is I was trying to establish a household, but I didn't have, for instance, my mom there to help me organize things. I think a lot of times when you get your first place, a girl, you might have friends help you might have your mom help you figure out how to organize the house, when you should do things. I was having to kind of try and figure that out on my own. And obviously, your mom had run the house a certain way, and your mom's quite an efficient homemaker, I'd say. Probably a lot more efficient than I am, say, but especially back in those days when I was still figuring things out. But that is kind of a pain point, figuring out how you're going to manage this. And suddenly, you're not in that safe cocoon that you have when you're in a long-distance relationship. But when you're together, it's almost like a holiday. You know, you're just spending all of your time snuggling in love, having sex, doing fun things together. Suddenly you're working, and it's just kind of normal life, and some of that glamour is gone. Did you struggle with that, do you think? I mean, I know I massively did.
I don't know, it was difficult to look back on because I was working from home.
Yeah.
So I was there all day. So the little things like not having towels, you were out of the house and
At my
you were
job,
washing your hands
yeah.
at work, you know, but for me, like, all the little issues
Okay,
that we
that
had,
happened like once though.
yeah, but I'm saying all the issues that you have at the home would be magnified for me because I was there all the time.
Yeah,
so like,
but you also did more housework then because you were home
yeah,
too.
I did. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I struggled with it being the first time for us to be doing all that, but I think it's just these things you navigate for the first time.
Yeah, and also I think emotions are quite high. I think when you get your first place together, you know, a lot of it you want it to be very, I guess, idealistic, you know, but day-to-day life isn't always, again, that glamorous, you know, and I think sometimes you're a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Like jaded when it comes down to seeing like, oh, okay, well, we get up, we go to work.
Yeah, and you're seeing that side of each other where you're tired and a bit raggy. And,
yeah.
But no, I think that's the period I think a lot of couples struggle with. And
I know, we definitely did.
we did, but we never... And I think it was beneficial for us that we were married because there was never any thought of ending the relationship. But I think if you're just sort of boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe it could get the better of you.
Well, and also we depended on each other financially as well. Even if we hadn't been married, forget all the visas and all that, like, we were paying for that stuff together. And
yeah, but I don't think that kept us together. I mean,
No.
yeah, you would have gone back to America, I would have moved back home. Like, it's not like
no,
we
I'm just
had
saying,
no
like,
choice.
when you just living together, whether or not you're married, that's a level of commitment because you are building a life together.
Yeah, and I think just these are the things that can catch couples off guard that you don't really plan how the distribution of chores and who's in charge of this, who's in charge of that. Well, I did the dinner last night, it's your turn to cook tonight, or you do the dishes. I don't really feel like a lot of people have that conversation. You have the conversation about where we're going to live, or we can go out for dinner this many times a week, or,
Yeah.
you know, I can't wait to pick out our bed in together, and all those fun things. And suddenly you're just sort of hit in the face with the reality of it.
Exactly. Like, those things are really fun, you know, going out and even still, I mean, we've talked about that a few times on Instagram and in podcast episodes. Like, we love working on our home together. And
yeah, absolutely. And I think, but just, there's also a level of awkwardness that when you have that first argument, it's, well, do I want this person seeing this side of me? Do you want to see that side of that person? Then how do you reconcile after that first argument? Because you're learning, well, you know, how serious was that to them?
Yeah.
Maybe, like, I can recover quite quickly from an argument, but I think, well, I don't know what your state of mind is. And
you don't care anymore, though. Do you? I mean, I vividly remember our first proper argument when we were together, but it was when we were in America. But do you remember, like, living together, like, our first proper argument? I mean,
No.
I can't even. There were so many.
We've had a period of time in that first flat, I think, where we just, it was hard.
We didn't get on great for a period of time.
No, and I just felt like everything we said irritated each other, and like I said, it's just our bedding in period, and we look back on it, but I think that those periods that are really testing and trying, and a lot of couples would think, do you know what, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
We came through the other side of it, and it made everything a lot better because we learned from it how to talk to each other, what each other's preferences are. You know, like, you can just sort of understand, okay, well, you've got that opinion because how your mum did things, that's how my mum did things.
Yeah.
And you find the middle ground. I just think we went through a period of time where we argued a lot, and these days we hardly argue at all because we know, if I say that, things are going to blow up, this isn't worth the argument, I know where you're coming from. We're much more mature with each other.
I have noticed as well, there's a lot more silent moments after if one of us is just having a bad day or the other one really ticks us off, we're a lot better at holding our tongues. And I think that's come from that period where it was really hard.
Yeah, because it used to be we would just...
None of us would filter anything. Neither of us would, you know, bite our tongue. But even now, it often happens in the car because that's when you're thrown together for extended periods of time. And one of us will say something and you're met with just complete silence and you know, okay, they're holding their tongue. And I definitely notice when you do it, and I think you recognize it in me, and you think, okay, I should probably stop now. They're doing their best to diffuse the situation by not saying what they want to. I should do the same by not pushing it.
And I think as well, there's an element that you just understand where that person's coming from more.
Yeah.
You know, well, you're saying that because I can't think of any examples, but just basically these periods where you're arguing, you're really learning about the other person, and it just helps both of you. So I think we've reached the point where we don't argue as much anymore.
Well, a perfect example is this was the other day. We've had loads of stuff going on with like repairs in the house and stuff, and I was working from home this week to be here for the repair people, and I got a text from you saying like, "Oh, would you mind popping out and doing this?" And I was really frazzled from having to. I
did say at lunch.
Yeah, I was taking a lunch break, obviously, at some point during the day. There was nothing really wrong with your request per se. I'm just explaining, you know. I
just want people to know I didn't expect you to
run
stop
out and
working.
do it then. Yeah.
And where I asked you to go is very close.
We had 2 repairs that day. The first one had been, and they weren't able to fix it. Basically, had to rebook it. Anyways, there's all this rebooking, waiting for other people to come around. And so I was a bit frazzled. I was trying to get my work done. I had lots to get done. And also, I've been going through quite an anxious period and not doing very well. And what you asking me to do that when it was a shop that Rich drives directly past on his way home. And it just made me snap a bit. And I said, no, I'm not doing that because I'm annoyed with you. So we had a bit of an exchange, and you kind of put the brakes on. You said, look, I don't know why you're acting this way, but it's not really acceptable, and I'm not going to correspond with you while you're acting like this.
Well, I was also at work.
Yeah.
So it's tricky for me to have this text argument.
But at home.
But I was in the office. I had people around me. It's hard to have a text argument.
So it's not like things don't get feisty or we don't have issues with each other from time to time. We absolutely do. We're human. But we're getting better at communicating. You're acting a certain way. I don't know what's motivating that, but it's not okay, and I'm not going to get into this. And then we didn't have an argument. You know, I put the brakes on as well and thought, you know what, I'm acting this way because I'm going through a rough time. That doesn't give me the excuse to project that on you or take it out on you. So I apologize, and everything was fine. So it is something that you learn to recognize absolutely in each other. But I do think that where we are now, I don't think we would have had, if, like I said a few minutes ago, if we hadn't gone through that really tricky period of when we first, you know, were living together in our own place. But I also don't think that we would have made it through that period if we hadn't been long distance and had the communication skills that we do because of being long distance.
Yeah, I know that us being long distance, we just had to work so hard in the relationship. And I think that's something we spoke about before on the podcast, that it just feels different. You can look at the other person and think, I know what it took to be here. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to let this argument get the better of things, and you're more than the ugliness of that moment and things like that.
Yeah, because I think when you're in a long-distance relationship, most of what you... I mean, yeah, you do see the ugly parts and stuff, but, you know, when you talk to each other, you're happy because you're talking to each other. You might be sad, you know, expressing your sadness.
You're also generally talking in isolation, whereas when you're in person, you're around that person's friends and family. When you're
in a normal setting, yeah.
Yeah, you're happy you're on the phone to them, and you're only talking to them.
Yeah, you get their undivided attention, basically. And then when you're visiting each other... Again, you get each other's undivided attention. Yeah, you might socialize with other people, but suddenly when you move in and you close the distance and you're having a life together, you don't get 100% of that person's focus because they have their job, which you don't really notice when you're apart because you're not, you know, it's not something you're as aware of.
Well, then you've also got, you know, the early mornings. You've got them. You come home late you come home potentially late from work and you're tired, and you know you've had a busy day and. Yeah, you get all the realities of life.
You get the good, you get the great stuff.
I kind of feel like it's
bad stuff
the same conversation people have about social media. Of, you know, you're only seeing people's highlight reels on Facebook. You're only seeing what people want you to see. I kind of feel like there's an element of similarity with going from long distance, or actually any relationship, because even if you're in close proximity and you're going on dates, you're seeing a person in a good mood. They've made an effort. They've dressed up. They've had a shower. They're happy to see you. They're putting on. People generally want to put on
best foot forward thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, even when you're like when we were long distance, I'd come home from work. If we were gonna Skype, you know, with webcam, you know, I'd freshen up my makeup. I'd make sure my hair looked okay. I'd put on a cute top. You have a minute to think, okay, I'm gonna present the best version of me right now, but you can't do that 100% of the time. And when you're living your life together, you know, you're going to see the less glamorous things. And most people that's not going to bother because you're so happy to be together. But it's just suddenly you get the whole person.
Yeah, you get, you know, toilet breaks and not wearing makeup and wake up in the morning and bad breath. And you just get all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And those are all great things. I mean, they're so wonderful because you get the 3-dimensional version of the person, not just the person on the other side of the phone or the FaceTime screen or whatever it is. But it can take some getting used to. And I remember kind of, you know, earlier on in the episode, we were talking about how you get the less glamorous version of it all. And that was something that I found really hard because, you know, if you've listened to, you know, our story, episode 1, you know, we talked for years and years off and then really consistently for almost a year before we actually met. And that summer was just like a holiday, complete vacation, because obviously I was teaching. I'd come here for a month. I wasn't working. Your work was such, you know, you were freelance, so you were able to really work hard until I came to take some time off. You might have done the odd day of work while I was there, but we just got to be completely with each other, sightsee, eat, walk, adventure for an entire month without any outside distraction. Seeing your family a bit was it. And then suddenly, you know, after we were apart, and that was really hard, and then you came to America for 6 months, you were living in my family home, you were working from home during the day, and I was at work all day. And I remember suddenly feeling really disenchanted with all of that. Like, all I had known of our relationship was this really fanciful interaction and romantic talking, and then that whole month of just being focused solely on each other and making our plans for the future. And then suddenly I was thinking I had my time with you, but I was having to think about work and my friends and my family and money and everything. And it was just, I didn't want to think about all that. I wanted my life to 100% be just us in a love cocoon. And that was kind of hard for me to get used to. Eventually I did, but it took me, I'd say, a good year and a bit.
Yeah.
I would say to you, I miss that summer. I just want to go back to that summer, blah, blah, blah. So there are some hurdles, even though you have the relief, the 1,000% relief and happiness that you're finally together and you're not going to be apart anymore. There are new challenges. Figuring out how to make that life you've been dreaming about, and not just the ideas of, oh, we want to do this and we want to do that, but actually
and you have to make sure that you're not more in love with the idea of
the relationship
than the actual relationship.
100%. And I think at times maybe I was guilty of that, but only because I think I was frustrated with maybe not being able to make the plans that we wanted. I mean, when you have the dreams of making a life together, they might be quite specific. That might be owning a house in a certain area or having a flat in a certain area. You know, we had the challenge of, okay, well, we have to live with family for a little while until I was able to get a job. That wasn't ideal by any situation, you know, having to share space with family. And then it was, okay, we have this flat, but we don't have the money to maybe buy this furniture and things we want. And, you know, you have these dreams, but they're not as easy as you think they're going to be.
I really feel like overcoming those adversities make things stronger.
And it makes you more grateful. I mean, we've come a long way in the 7 year and a bit years since we've been married. God, we've had 2 flats. We rented a house.
This is our 4th home.
This is our fourth home together without family. 5th, 6th, if you count your house and your parents' house and my parents' house.
Yeah, this is our 4th place we've lived in on our own.
And I think that's something to be aware of as the person moving to the new place. It's going to be tricky, and you're not going to feel home for a little while. And that can be another pain point early on. You don't feel like maybe you belong a little bit. I mean, you feel like you belong with your partner 100%. You should. But I really feel like I didn't have a place that was home until here. I mean, the first flat I really loved.
But again, though, like, that's something people wouldn't think of when you're moving. You wouldn't be thinking, am I going to feel at home? Am I going to feel uprooted? You're just going to think, oh, I'm moving to this person and I'm moving to this new country. It's a new adventure. But, you know, you don't necessarily think about the downsides.
No. And that's another thing to take into consideration during the initial part is that settling in period. I think we've mentioned, you know, maybe in previous episodes that, you know, I had a period, in the episode, The Realities of Moving to Be with Your Long Distance Partner 2 episodes ago, I think. You know, I kind of had those, during the day, I was busy enough planning our wedding, going out for the day, hanging out. In the evenings, for those first maybe month or two, I'd sit in bed and think, what have I done? What have I done? Can I do this? So not only are you dealing with the living together for the first time, which even if you're not a long distance couple, if you live in the same town, moving in together can be, a challenge. We have friends who've been together for years and they got a place together. And I remember her saying to me, how do you live with a boy? I just can't figure that. I don't know how to make this work.
But it's tricky though, because these are only things we know from hindsight. You can't
know
can't
going
think
into
about
it.
and plan about how you're going to feel in another country, because you're not going to know how you react to it until you've done it.
But maybe people listening to this will know that they could potentially feel that way and then plan for it.
And you can certainly plan for acknowledging that it's likely to happen.
Yeah.
It caught us off guard. If you know it's likely to happen, you won't be caught off guard. And when it happens, you can think, okay, this is what they were talking about. It's going to pass.
You have to think about this from our perspective. There weren't really these online communities.
If there were, we certainly didn't know.
Well, I mean, Twitter was still kind of a new thing. So hashtags, like, you wouldn't find LDR, like, hashtags anywhere. Instagram was maybe a year old, so it wasn't anything near the community just now. Reddit didn't exist.
Instagram wasn't on Android phones at this point.
No, I mean, I got it when it was... I think I got Instagram in 2011.
But I don't know necessarily what existed. I mean,
maybe forums. I'm sure there was some
I feel
forums.
like we only mentioned before we started this podcast that we feel like we're seeing more long-distance relationships because this boom in technology is making it easier.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, whatever did and didn't exist, we certainly weren't aware that it existed if it did.
Yeah.
We were very on it. We figured it all out on our own.
Yeah, and maybe we didn't do it the best way, but, we've made it so far. But I think what I was trying to get, my point that I was trying to get at, maybe around the, roundabout way, was we had all the normal challenges you have moving into someone, adding in the long distance. And then also, obviously, I was feeling completely frazzled and being away from home, and I couldn't work. Money was a worry. I mean, we were living with your family, but still we needed money to move out at some point, which was the number one thing on our list to do, was to get our own space. But I think the key during this period is to be really patient with each other. Don't forget why you worked hard. And you may not experience this at all. It may be smooth sailing day one when you move in. It depends. I mean, especially if you're maybe only moving 3 or 4 hours to be together. Not everyone had 5,000-6,000 miles and time zones and visas to go up with in their long distance relationship. But yeah, I think you just need to be patient. You need to communicate constantly and think about the way your partner is best at hearing things. How can you say something so they're not going to feel attacked? And just enjoy it. Enjoy the days of maybe not having much, maybe having to sit on the floor and watch TV, and just, it's going to change so fast. And I look back on those early days now, and even though we fought a lot, I don't really remember what those fights were about. I just remember us finding our way, and it was an adventure.
They're always trivial, aren't they? But...
Yeah, most of them. I mean, I remember a few fights that have stuck with us.
I think the fights themselves are trivial, but I think the learnings are important.
Oh yeah,
because it's things like, what is it about what I've just said that's annoyed that person? Is it my tone of voice? Is it certain accusations? You can really learn, and then you'll eventually you kind of reach a point where you can say the same content, but you know how to say it in a way that you can actually have a proper conversation about it or make the person think. Whereas if you just have an argument and they dig their heels in, you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah,
I think I mentioned this, I'm sure I've mentioned this on a previous episode, but this time that we're talking about, where we were in our first two flats actually were a struggle, but fighting a lot. And I remember I called my brother, who had just got married a couple months before us. I said, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to talk to him without it being a fight. And he said, look, Andrea, basically what I've learned so far in relationships is it's 100% saying what you need to say in a way you need to say it so you get your feelings across, but also saying it in a way that the partner will hear it in the way that it needs to be heard, which is really hard. And I think we're still figuring that out, but we're a lot better at it than we used to be.
Yeah.
So it is a balancing act, and I think it's important to have your own time during that period where you're settling in. Make sure you're doing the things you need to take care of yourself, because you can't nourish your relationship if you're not nourishing yourself. And I think that's part of what was a struggle for both of us. We didn't really have many friends near us at first. You kind of lost. You got back in touch with a lot of your school friends, but you lost touch. Yeah,
moved about.
Yeah, I mean, you had your one kind of best friend that would come down and stay, but for me, it was really hard to make friends. I had a couple friends from the pub I was working at, but that period was really hard because I felt very alone. And this is something I still battle with. If you and I have a fight, it puts me into a panic attack because I feel like, you're not on my side right now, but you're still my best friend. And who do you want to go to when you're fighting with the person you love most? Your best friend. And when that person's the same, it's awful. And especially when, my best friend lives back in California where I grew up, and, I can't always get hold of her, time zones, whatever. Just be aware that might be an issue and have a way to deal with that, or think about how you can, or communicate something with your partner so that you can address that. Because that's a really hard feeling to have, that when you're alone, you're here for this person, you're not getting along with them. You do start to feel, or you can start to feel a little bit like, why am I here? Is this what I wanted? In reality, it's a relationship, and you're going to have bad days.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That is okay.
Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think we can wrap it up here.
Cool. Would like to say that we checked on our podcasting host site. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
In the most roundabout way. And we have broken 1,000 episode listens. So we are really excited about that. Thank you guys for listening, and hopefully continuing to come back for each episode. Be sure to message us any questions you have, anything you'd like us to cover. We'd love to hear, and we do read everything. And we will be back with you next week.